At first, all we heard was the noise. Just after the sun had finished setting, the sound pierced through the sky, a loud siren like noise that sounded like it was emanating from above us. It only rang out for a short amount of time, probably about 30 seconds, definitely not longer than a minute. Everyone in my small town heard it, and for the second few days, everyone I met complained about the ringing that this sound left in all of our ears. No one was too sure as to what it was, but everyone had their own little theories. Evie, the librarian, said that it was a fire alarm. Stuart, my barber, believed it was a sound that came out of everyone's TVs. And George, my elderly neighbour, saw that it was his hearing aid playing up and that he was the only one to hear it. As for me, I could have sworn that I saw something large and metallic floating high up in the sky. Of course, no one I told this believed me and passed it off as another wild theory. But I know what I saw. Unfortunately, my wild theory would turn out to be not so wild, as only 5 days later, the same sound was heard throughout my town once again. This time, however, more people claimed to have seen what I had seen only 5 days before, the large metallic object that was floating in the sky. The sound rang out for around 30 seconds once again, and then there was silence. After the second occurrence, most people in my town were beginning to think that this may not be their TV or their hearing aid, and instead started to think that something much more sinister was at play. Only 2 days after the second incident, the sound was heard once again, and this time there was no mistaking where it had come from. Just after sunset, a loud whirring sound of an engine was heard, and so many people left the safety and comfort of their homes to come outside to see what could be making the noise. The sight that greeted these people when they stepped outside of their homes was one that they would never forget. They saw a large silver metal aircraft that was hovering around 30 meters off of the ground. It was long and a triangle-like shape. There were 3 lights shining down from the body of the aircraft, one in each corner of the triangle. All that and the rest of the town could do was stand there in shock and watch this large aircraft. I think I stood there most of the night, just watching, just waiting for this strange vehicle to do something. It never did. It stayed in one spot all night, just hovering, just looking down over my small town, looking down on us as we were looking back up at it. In the early hours of the next morning, as the sun began to poke up from underneath the horizon, the aircraft slowly began to rise up into the sky, and before long, it was no longer visible. Everyone stood in the same spot until long after it had disappeared back into the sky, back to where it had come from. That day, the conversation in the town didn't ever steer away from the events of the night before. Some people were scared, some were curious, some didn't even seem to be fazed by what had transpired. That night, the aircraft visited us once again. This began a regular occurrence. Every night, we would be visited by the aircraft at sunset, and then at sunrise, it would disappear again. It almost became a tradition to go out the front of your house at sunset and watch the triangle-shaped object descend from the sky, then return back inside and try and ignore the loud whirring engine sound that would continue on throughout the night. We got used to this happening every night, and it became something to do in this usually quiet and boring town. We did notice, however, that local news would never report on it or seem interested when someone would bring the story to them. The other thing that would happen, that was also strange, was that whenever this event was posted onto a social media site, the post would be deleted within the first minute or two. We got used to being visited by this aircraft, and whoever or whatever was inside got used to visiting us. Well, so we all thought, until the disappearances started. First, a few of the pets went missing. A few cats and a couple of dogs that, when reported, were classed as runaways and the owners were reassured that they would probably return home soon. They didn't though. They never returned home. No one was too worried when it was just a few pets that went missing. But when Murray, the postman, went missing, that's when panic set in. Not long after he went missing, so did Jean, George, and Valerie. Soon, with all of the disappearances, less and less people would head outside to watch this object descend from the sky. Eventually, after the fifth person went missing, Sam from down the road from me, no one would dare go outside while that thing was there. There was almost a self-enforced curfew upon the town, and everyone knew to be home by sundown and to start inside until the sun had risen once more. Because if you were outside while the sun was down, you went missing. One thing that you should probably know about me at this point is that I work at the local supermarket, and I work the closing shift. Every night, I count the money inside the registers, clean up inside the store, and then as I'm leaving, I lock up the large sliding door that is the main passage in and out of the shop. This is a usual routine and one that I follow the 5 nights a week that I work. I used to not finish until around 10 at night, but since recent events, the store now closes at 4:30, allowing all the workers to make it home safe. Tonight, however, I was running a little bit behind. An elderly lady that I didn't recognize had come into the store at just gone 4:30 and asked to quickly be let in to buy a new light bulb, as the one in her kitchen just blown and she didn't want to be left in the dark. Not while that thing floated around not far from her house. I felt sorry for her. I wanted to help this afraid old lady. I told her she could come inside and showed her where to find the light bulbs. She looked at the selection we had before grabbing one off the shelf. She came up to the counter and paid for it, and then she began to hobble over the large sliding door to exit the shop. Just as the 2 electric doors opened, she took one step outside before turning back towards me. And in a voice that sounded slightly different to the one that I had heard her use before, she said, "You will do very nicely. Very nicely indeed." She then gave me a small smile and her eyes looked me up and down. She turned around and left. I didn't think too much of it at this point. I thought maybe it was just the ramblings of a scared old woman. I then counted the money in the register and began to clean the store. As I was mopping down one of the aisles, I noticed the sun through the large glass sliding doors. I noticed that it was getting quite low in the sky, getting close to sunset. I quickly ran the mop back to where it's kept, left the store out of the large sliding doors, and then locked them and started my 5-minute walk back to my house. As I walk, I watch the sun getting closer and closer to the ground. I turn one corner, only 3 more corners to go until I get to my house. I turn the next corner, getting close now. I turn the 3rd corner, and as I look up at the sun, I see that it has now reached the horizon. As I watch it, I see it dropping further and further under the horizon. It appears to be taunting me, laughing at me, like it knows what's going to happen once it disappears underneath the horizon. The sun doesn't need to experience the night. It can just disappear and then reappear in the morning. But not me. I first need to face the terror that is the night. I turn the 4th corner. I can now see my house. The sun is now over halfway gone and darkness is starting to overpower the light. My heart is racing as my quick walk turns into a jog and then turns into a sprint. I make it to my front door, out of breath and afraid. I put my hand into my pocket and reach for my keys, but all I feel inside the pockets of my work pants is my wallet. I can't feel my keys anywhere. They must be back at the store, I realised. I turned to run back to the shop, but as I take a few steps away from my house, I realise I'm too late. The sun has now set, and I know that at sunset, they come. Right on cue, the sound of the whirring engine can be heard, and then I see 3 small lights in the sky. piercing through the cloud that is blocking my view of the aircraft. The aircraft then breaks through the cloud barrier and see that it is directly on top of me. As I am frozen in fear, staring straight up into the sky, I hear a small, throaty laugh coming from beside me. At this noise, I snap out of my frozen state and look at what could have had that sound. I see, standing next to me, the old lady from the store. She's grinning, exposing her small, grey-looking teeth. I see that she is holding something in her left hand. It takes me a couple of moments to realize what it was that she was holding. In her hand was my keychain, with all of my keys still attached to it. Her long, wrinkly fingers were grasped around it, firmly enough that I could see the whites of her knuckles. Her small laugh begins to grow louder and louder, until it's cackling manically next to me. I stare at her in disbelief, wondering why an old lady would steal my keys, especially when she knew I needed to make it home so soon. She suddenly stops laughing. Her upturned lips suddenly drop, like they were pulled down with some string. Her smile changes to a snarl almost instantly, and without hesitation, I started to run. I run in the opposite direction of the old lady, sprinting as fast as my legs will carry me. I run down to the end of my street, and then veer slightly to the left and continue running. I run along this fairly small street, and that's when I notice it. The large aircraft is still above me. It's moving across the sky, always making sure that it is above me. It's following me. I try to throw off the aircraft by running down random streets, and I even tried turning around and running back the way I had already come. This was all in vain, however, as the aircraft stayed above me, no matter what I did. I eventually grew tired from running, my breathing was so heavy, and it felt like oxygen just wasn't reaching my lungs. I needed to stop running, and as I passed a large wooden forest area that runs along one edge of my town, I decided to turn and run into there. Once I entered this forest, I found a large tree not too far in and began to climb. I got up to the second branch up, and that's where I sat. That's where I'm still sitting. I don't know how long I've been up here, but my phone is now starting to go flat. The last thing I want to do before it dies on me is to get this post uploaded. My phone is still surviving, but it's very nearly out of power. I've been sat on this branch for what feels like a week. The aching in my legs and arms is immense, but I've just noticed something. I see some lights coming in through the trees. I'm going to press upload on my story, and then I'm going to investigate. I hope it's the sun, risen for another day, not knowing that it has saved my life, but I'm not sure. If it is the sun, then I may provide an update. But if it isn't, and it is instead a light from the aircraft, then this may be the last message I ever send. Wish me luck. You know that split second when you sneeze that your eyes close? That moment just as the sneeze leaves your nose and your eyes can only do one thing: close. Only for a second, but in that uncontrollable moment, you cannot see anything. You can only see blackness, and you no longer have any idea what is around you, or maybe what is coming towards you. I was sitting at my desk at work, half thinking about what I was going to do after work, and half focusing on filling out the reports that were due a few hours ago. I felt a slight tickle in my nose, but I ignored it and passed it off as allergies or hay fever. I continued to type away at the reports on my computer, but the tickle in my nose began to feel stronger and stronger. Before I knew it, I was on the verge of letting out a large sneeze. I felt the sensation travel up through my nose, and I let out a large sneeze. Achoo! My eyes snapped shut as the sneeze exited my nostrils, and when I opened them, only a split second later, I could have sworn I saw a small, wrinkled hand on the other side of the office. The hand flashed up, and before I could really process what it was gone again. It appeared to be just a hand floating in the air, not attached to an arm or to the body of someone, just a solitary hand floating in the middle of the office. At this point, I didn't really think anything of it. I thought it was just a weird hallucination, just something that had come from within my mind, my own imagination. That was until later that day, when I sneezed for the second time. Achoo! The second sneeze of the day came just as I was leaving work and crossing the car park on the way to my car. It came out of nowhere. I think the pollen that came from the flowers that surrounded the car park was what caused me to sneeze. Once again, my eyes closed, because whenever my nose needed to sneeze, my eyes felt that they needed to close. The world turned to black, just for a second, before I opened them again and looked out across the almost empty car park. There it was again, the small, wrinkled hand from before. This time, however, I noticed a small marking on the hand. A mole, maybe? Perhaps a small tattoo? It didn't matter, really, because the other thing that I noticed was far more troublesome. The hand had moved. It had moved slightly closer towards me, closer towards my face. I didn't sneeze again for the rest of the day, maybe because I just didn't need to, or maybe because I had tried to stop myself from doing it again. I went to bed that night trying to push the events of the day out of my mind. I tried not to think about the hand and the fact that it appeared to be moving closer towards me. I laid in bed for a while, maybe around an hour, trying to push these thoughts out of my mind, and eventually I managed to convince myself that it was my own mind just playing a trick on me. Somehow, the act of sneezing had made me see something that wasn't really there. I woke up early the next morning, after having a fairly peaceful sleep. I slept the whole way through the night, and I even managed to not have any dreams about sneezing or floating hands. I didn't really think much of what had happened the previous day, and the strange events actually began to be forgotten. I had a nice warm shower and dried myself off before getting dressed into my white shirt and pants, ready for the long, hard day at work. The last thing I had to do before I left was make breakfast. As they say, it's the most important meal of the day. I had gotten up a bit earlier than usual, so decided that I had time to make myself a nice, hearty meal to start my day off. I cracked 2 eggs into a frying pan, letting them slightly cook, before turning them over and adding bacon to the pan. Both the eggs and the bacon cooked nicely, and before long, I had both the eggs and the bacon sitting on my plate, steaming and ready to be eaten. I took a bite of the egg and enjoyed the nice, warm white that I had bitten into. It just needed one thing, though: pepper. I went to the cupboard and grabbed the shaker and poured a little bit on the eggs. As soon as the pepper left the shaker, however, I felt the unmistakable feeling of a sneeze building up. Achoo! The sneeze was loud and fierce, and the noise travelled throughout my kitchen. My eyes were forced closed, forced into darkness. When they reopened, that's when I saw it again. The hand, inside of my own kitchen. It only appeared for a second before disappearing. Achoo! I sneezed again. The pepper was really playing havoc with my nose. This time when my eyes closed, the hand was there again. Only this time it was a little bit closer towards my face. This time I again noticed the small mark on the wrinkled hand. Only I could see exactly what it was. It was a small tattoo of an anchor. I did recognize this tattoo, but I couldn't remember where from. I didn't have much time to think about it though, because another sneeze was already brewing, and it was just waiting to be let out. Achoo! This time, the hand was only about a meter away from my face. Its fingers were now outstretched, like it was reaching out towards me, wanting to grab a hold of my face. Achoo! I let out a fourth sneeze, and when my eyes opened again, the hand was only a centimetre away from the front of my face. The hand's long and bony fingers were now reaching out in front of it. As soon as I saw the hand this close towards me, I jumped back and away from the fingers that were almost touching me. This is when I heard it. The low-pitched, gruff voice that said the words I hadn't heard for a long time. Got your nose. I hadn't heard that saying for a very long time. I know that almost every child has had at least one experience of an adult reaching out and grabbing their nose before being told that the adult has their nose. For me, this would be a common occurrence when I would go over to Mr. Furch's house. Mr. Furch was the middle-aged man that lived next door to me and my mother when I was just a kid. I was around 6 or 7 when we lived next to him, and sometimes he would babysit me if my mum was at work and I was not at school. Whenever I was over at Mr. Furch's house, he would play a game of Got Your Nose. He would reach out and grab my nose, then say those words, and I would laugh, like it was the funniest thing I had ever experienced. I vividly remember his hand travelling towards my face. I would stare at his small anchor tattoo that was on top of his hand and would wonder how he managed to get a picture inside of his skin. I didn't see Mr. Furch that often, maybe once or twice a month, but that was often enough to notice when he was gone. Mr. Furch moved away after about a year of visiting his house every so often, and I never saw him again. I never really knew where he went, and when I asked my mum about it, she said that he had moved on to another place far away from us. As a child, this was a good enough explanation as to where he had gone, but now I had grown up a bit, there was more to know. Especially now, as I was seeing his hand floating near me every time that I sneezed. I quickly drove to work, worried I would be late because of my sneezing fit that morning. I managed to get to my desk and fire up my computer just as the clock ticked over to 9, the time that I start. I log into my computer and I click into a spreadsheet to begin work for the day. I work for about 10 minutes, but the urge becomes strong. I must find out more about Mr. Furch. I opened up Google and searched. I remember that his first name was Arthur, so I typed Arthur Furch and clicked enter. The top result was a news article from 4 years ago, and the title read, "Serial Killer Dies in Prison." I apprehensively click onto this new article and begin reading, hoping that it wouldn't turn out Mr. Furch was a serial killer. It did, though. I read through the entire article, and it was revealed that Mr. Furch would kidnap young men, 19 to 20 years old, keep them hostage for a few days before killing them. In every case, the body was found with severe facial mutilations, like he had removed parts of the victims' faces before killing them. The article also showed that he had died in prison just over 4 years ago. This made me feel some relief. How much damage could a dead man's hand cause, if this hand even did really exist? I made it through another 4 hours of work, focusing on the jobs that I needed to get done that day. At lunchtime, I headed to the break room, a fairly small room with a large white table in the middle of it. I sat down at one of the tables, and just after I'd finished sitting, I looked up and saw a small pot filled with assorted flowers. I tried my best not to let out a sneeze right away, but instead tried to hold on to it. This didn't really work, and only around 20 seconds later, the urge to sneeze was unbearable, and so I let it out. Achoo! The sneeze erupted from inside my nose, and my eyes closed momentarily. I opened them again, and the last thing I remember was the hand coming towards my face, grabbing it, and then me falling backwards as darkness clouded my vision. That's what led me to here, the hospital room that I've been occupying the past few weeks. I still haven't gotten used to my new look. It will require a lot of adjustment. It's extremely difficult to adjust to a change in your appearance, especially a difference as big as this one. I look across the room and towards the mirror on the other side of the hospital room. I look at the face staring back at me, but I don't recognize it. I'm used to the reflection looking back at me, not to have a large gaping hole in their face, right where my nose used to be. New channels added was the message that appeared on my TV when I turned it on. I was curious as to what channels could have been added, and I was a bit excited, as I was getting sick of the same news, sports, and movie channels that I constantly flick through. I brought up the TV guide and scrolled through, looking at what channels I now had access to. There were a couple of standard ones, showing reruns of old sitcoms, a channel that was exclusively for sheepdog trials, and one that only showed infomercials. I was pretty disappointed in the new selection, and in only 10 minutes, I'd flicked past all of them and gotten bored. I decided to scroll through all of the channels once more, in case of something more exciting was now playing. I went through a station playing an old episode of Friends. I quickly skipped over the sheepdog trials, and I landed on the infomercial channel. I don't know what it was that compelled me to keep watching the station. Maybe it was the man wearing the bright purple suit. Maybe it was the nice golden watch that they were selling. Or maybe it was the way the man in the suit was smiling at me. Whatever the reason though, I ended up engrossed in this channel and continued to watch. This 24-karat gold watch is just the thing you need to show off to your friends, the man in the purple suit was saying. And for today's special, you can get it for just 3 easy payments of $19.99. No way that can be real, I thought. A real golden watch for only $60? I continued to watch the adverts, and the man kept on going with his sales pitch. Certified real gold, and for the low price of 3 payments of $19.99, he said while smiling. It can all be yours today. He continued to speak, all while smiling straight at camera. Straight at me. I don't know what compelled me to pick up the phone and dial the number that was on the screen. The way the man smiled at me, and the way he told me that I needed this watch, made me feel secure, and made me feel like I should ring and order one. As soon as I entered the number into my phone and hit dial, a voice on the other end suddenly answered. Hello, I suppose you're ringing about the watches, a woman's voice said. Yes, I was wondering if they're actually real gold, and if there are actually only 3 payments of $19.99, I asked. Of course, they are, she replied, in a way that wasn't condescending, but wasn't really polite either. We're not here to scam you, we're here to help you out with a good deal. I thought about it for a moment, and then decided that I would purchase one. If they turned out to be real, then I was spending $60 on something that could be worth a small fortune. So why the hell not? I placed my order by giving my name, my bank details, and my address, so that it could be shipped out to me. The lady on the phone told me to expect my order in the next 3 to 5 business days. I hung up the phone and turned off the TV, happy with my purchase. I then decided to head outside and play with my dog for a while. As we played fetch, all I could think about was the watch and whether or not it would be real. I patiently waited over the next few days, and on the 4th day after placing my order, I heard a van out the front. It stopped just outside of my house. I heard it idle for around 20 seconds, and then I heard it take off again. I went out to the front of my house and collected the box that I found sitting at the front of my yard. I took it inside and opened it. Inside, I found a shiny golden watch that was sitting inside of a small box. I picked it up and had a closer look at it and was amazed at the way sun bounced off on what appeared to be pure gold. I knew that there was only one way to find out that this was true value. That was to take it to a jeweler to have it evaluated. Later that day, I found myself at the jewellery store, watching an older man looking at my watch through a magnifying glass. He had been studying it for over 10 minutes. Eventually, he placed the magnifying glass down and looked up at me. Very impressive watch you have here, sir, he said. Very impressive indeed. He delicately handed me back the watch and began saying a sentence it would change my life. I would say that in its current condition, this watch is worth around $55,000. I couldn't believe it. How could somewhere sell a watch worth that much for so cheap? I stood in shock for a little while before thanking the jeweler and leaving the store. Once I got home, I placed the watch on my kitchen table and just stared at it in disbelief. I had a small fortune sitting in front of me, and I barely paid anything for it. Something inside of me then told me to find this station again and to see what other items they might be selling. I went over to the television and turned it on, went to the TV guide and found the station once more. Once again, the man in the purple suit was staring right into the camera. This time, however, he was holding two small birds, one in each hand. These racing pigeons may look ordinary, but they are really something else, he was saying excitedly. Worth at over $200,000 each, these birds are a great investment, and for today only, we have the great deal of buy one, get one 50% off. As he was talking, a phone number appeared on the screen. I saw that this number was different from last time, but I thought this could be because it was for a different product. The one thing the man didn't mention was the price, but after getting the watches so cheap, I thought that these birds probably wouldn't cost too much. I had never thought about owning birds. I got enough love from my dog and so had never considered buying another pet. However, the man said they were worth over $200,000, so I knew I had to have them. I typed the number on my screen into the phone and hit dial. Once again, a woman answered the phone straight away, but I could tell by the voice that it was a different woman than last time. You must have enjoyed your watch if you're already ordering again, she said, and gave a slight chuckle afterwards. I was a bit taken aback by this, but realised they probably have my number saved, and that's how she knew. I was very satisfied with my watch, thank you, I replied. Now I'm interested in those racing pigeons you have for sale. Oh yes, the buy one get one 50% sale, she asked. Yeah, that's the one. I was wondering how much they were, I asked her. Don't worry about the price, hon. They're worth a lot more than we will charge you for them, she answered. But a small payment will be taken from you. I've put your order through, and so expect them to arrive in 2 to 3 days. Suddenly, she hung up. Before I even had a chance to respond, she was gone. I didn't know what she meant by a small payment. I had many questions, and so I dialed the number again, but this time the call didn't go through. It was just silence. I tried not to think about it too much over the next couple of days. I'm sure everything will be okay, I thought. I constantly checked my bank account to see if any money had been taken out, but nothing had been. 3 days later, though, I was awoken early in the morning by the sound of a van parking out the front of my house, idling for a bit and then driving away. I knew exactly what it was. My delivery had arrived. I got out of bed and went outside and saw a small box sitting on my front lawn. Small air holes were cut into the box, and I could hear the sound of something flapping inside, sounding like it was trying to get out. I picked up the box and took it inside and decided to open it. The sight that greeted me inside of the box will be something that will always haunt me. The first thing that hit me when I opened the box was the smell. The strong, overpowering stench smelt like rotting meat. Suddenly, a bird flew upwards out of the box, hitting me in the face with its wing on the way out. This dazed me for a couple of seconds, and then I looked up at the bird that was now flying around my kitchen. It was definitely a pigeon, and hopefully an expensive one. I then looked back down into the box to see where the other pigeon was, and then I saw it. Covered in blood at the bottom of the box was the top half of a pigeon. Its head and half of its body were lying in the box, its bottom half nowhere to be seen. Blood covered the entire bottom of the box, and the pigeon's dead eyes were looking up at me. I let out a small scream and pushed the box away from me. I couldn't believe what I had seen. I was disturbed. You could do something like this, I thought. What kind of television station would send something like this out? I now understood what they meant by 50% off, though. I didn't know what to do with the package and I couldn't bring myself to look in it again, so I stayed sitting on my kitchen table. I sat in my lounge room trying to get away from the package. I once again checked my bank account and still no payment had been made. This made me curious as to what the payment would be, and also made me extremely worried about what the payment would be. That's when I heard it again. The van. It pulled up outside of my house. I got up out of my chair and went to open the front door to head outside to see the van. That's when I hesitated. I didn't know who was inside of the van or what they wanted with me. I stood there for maybe a minute, still listening to the van idle out of the front of my house. I managed to finally work up the courage to open the door. I stepped outside just as the van was speeding off. It was a dark black van and all of the windows had been blacked out too. It sped away quickly and I barely made it out the front door before the van had disappeared. I was worried now, wondering what they wanted with me and what they were just doing. I went back inside and sat back down, making sure to avoid looking at the box on the kitchen table on the way through. I sat for maybe 20 minutes before I decided to go outside to see my dog because I knew he would be able to provide some comfort. I went outside and called out to the dog, and usually when I do that, he comes straight over. But today, he didn't. In fact, I couldn't see him anywhere in the back garden. I looked all over for him, calling out his name, but I never got a response. I had a terrible feeling in my stomach. My missing dog and the van. I knew they were connected somehow. For whatever reason, I decided to turn on the TV, and as soon as I did, I saw him. My dog. The man in the purple suit was standing there, patting him on his head, staring straight at me while doing it. There was another dog standing next to mine. The last thing I heard the man say before my TV turned to static was, "For today only, we have the great deal of buy one, get one 50% off."